Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back again. We're doing our pandemic projects, which seem unending, just like this pandemic seems. And today I've chosen to do a transition reel. I previewed this on one of my earlier ones in terms of reels I'm going to work on. This is the Ryobi Fin Tek. It's the SX5M. Followed this one, the Ryobi SX5. It's a graphite versus metal frame, and it's kind of hard to see in terms of reading it, but it does read in very small letters Ryobi, and then Fin Tek in a little bit bolder print, and then the silver spin SX5M. So this was a transition reel. In the I believe it was the early 1990s, Ryobi sold the U.S. distribution rights for their reels to Berkeley, which we know is Gulp, Minnows and the like. And when Berkeley took over that, they changed the naming on it. And Fin Tek remained a Ryobi brand to be sold internationally, but not in the U.S. And so this is probably the last reel that Ryobi actually marketed in the U.S. We're going to take it apart. We're going to show you how it came together, and we'll show you how to service one of these if you have it, and we'll explain a little bit about it if you are looking to buy one, or if you have the opportunity to buy one, but knowing a little bit of the history behind it. So I like to start by doing a couple of things. I'll explain. I do wear a protective glove on my hand to keep dirt and grease and grime, which often accumulate in these reels, keep them off my hand. I'd like to use a parts tray to take the pieces and the parts that I remove, like the spool that we're going to remove here. And I also like to take pictures. I do it by a video, but I recommend everybody take pictures, particularly if you don't know the reel. I don't know this reel. I have a general idea what it is, but I don't know the reel, and schematics are not available. Then you certainly want to go and make sure that you can recover if you lose track, and the best way to recover is to go back and reference pictures. There's a little bit of dirt inside here, so we're going to just kind of take that off for a moment. There's a lot of wear on here, but this should come out, and it does come off. Yep. Just kind of curious on this. So it looks like we have the drag washers that are pressed into the case here, molded in, and unfortunately you can't do anything with those. Typically what happens with these, though, is they're a self-lubricating washer, like a Teflon or something, and doesn't require a lot of work. So we'll just kind of hope on that one, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do any servicing with that. This is a 50 or 60 size reel. It's a pretty big reel. It's meant for inshore ocean surf casting, deep rivers and lakes and the like. Nice reel, and it was made in Taiwan, where some of the others, including the earlier series, the Silver Spin series, that one was made in Japan. So they had moved over their production to Taiwan by that point. Okay, we're going to remove the handle, and that's done by taking out the handle screw. You'll notice that the other reel, this one's very tight in terms of lack of lubrication. You'll notice that other reel, the 5, has a handle screw as well. But that one's bolted right in. It doesn't look like the end cap. And that's just typical of an earlier model. You'll see that on a pen, on a Daiwa, on a Ryobi. They just kind of embed the screw, but there's no cap or anything that goes along the side of that. All right, handle goes in. Now we have 3 side plate screws, and I always look when I go to remove a side plate, is this side plate stopping here, which I tend to call a half case, or does it continue up under the rotor? And if it continued up under the rotor, you'd have to remove the rotor before you could remove the side plate. In this case, it's stopping short of that. So we'll just take our Phillips head screwdriver and remove those 3 screws. And as we do, I want to thank our local hometown heroes, our first responders that are out there day in and day out. As this pandemic continues to rage and pick up steam again in the fall here, I want to thank you for all it is that you do. And I want to thank everybody else associated with that too. So there's a second line. We call them essential workers, and they're doing just as much to keep us valuable, healthy, and keep us out of harm's way, and trying to maintain our life business as usual. And those would be everybody from truck drivers and delivery services to teachers and retail clerks and the local food stores and the like, and everybody that's dealing with the public day in and day out, when many of us would choose not to do that. So thank you all for what it is that you do. If you're fire, if you're EMT, if you're a doctor, a nurse, a hospital administrator, working in a VA, a long-term care facility, any of those positions, I know how busy you've been, and I have a special thank you for you during the month of January. If you have a reel that you would like to have service, well, I'm willing to provide that service at no charge to you. So just contact me in an email on the business card that follows. I'll be happy to tell you all the details behind that. Okay, we took the 3 screws out. We have a metal side plate, graphite spool, but there's a very clean one there. And as I mentioned, when I was kind of pulling that handle out, it just seems like it's very dry. This one uses a crosswind arm and a pin setup. You'll notice that there's a groove in this side of the case. That's where one part of the pin rides as a track. This is the pin, and you'll see an identical track behind that where the other side of that pin rides. These usually can just be pulled out by hand. If not, if you need an assist, grab a little pliers, pull that pin out. And this is where the parts tray comes in handy, because you don't have that pin rolling around. Take a picture at this point. It's always good. Notice that you have a little copper ring that sits on top of the crosswind arm. And once you remove that pin, you can remove the axle shaft by pulling up. And you can remove your crosswind arm. And you can remove that little shim washer. And then you can remove the main gear. So all of this is out, and I think if there's an issue with any of this, it's just that it's very dry. The reel itself, when I was testing it, was working fine. And it seemed to be pretty nice overall. So we're going to go ahead and remove the rotor just to see what's under there, making sure that if there is any dirt under there, we get it out. This has a traditional counterclockwise removal for the nut. So we'll take that off. Put that in my parts tray. Put that crosswind in my parts tray. All of the pieces in the parts tray. Now we should just be able to move up on the rotor here. And you'll see the internals. The internals have a anti-reverse dog that's controlled by a lever down below here. You can see how it moves in and out. It has a click ratchet or a tooth gear that's going to set in to stop the backpedaling of the reel. It's got a lot of dirt in it. It's got a collar above that adjusts for the rotor to keep the pressure off. And it's got a bearing below. So it looks like it's a bearing. Maybe a bushing. We'll take that off in a moment and we'll go see. All right, I'm going to remove that so it can come out. That way I can take off the collar. I'm going to lay this right on my table because these are going to go right back in. Then I have the click ratchet. Notice the orientation on it. And that's a bushing. So you really don't need to do anything with a bushing. If it was bearings, you'd kind of take it and go clean it out. Here you don't need to do anything other than clean the exterior of it. So we're not gonna go that extra step there because, well, there's nothing under there other than a solid piece of metal. So I'll leave it at that. That looks like some kind of metal. Doesn't look like brass. And I'm just going to put a good drink of oil. I'm going to use, in this case, a Penn Precision Reel oil. I'm just going to work it around, make sure that it does fine. Notice that there's a little bit of grease here. So dried dirt and grease. So let's get that in. A lot of people ask me about the anti-reverse dog. That question comes up from time to time. When you're doing these, please pay attention. There's a little spring here. You can just about see it. It's kind of hair width. But there's a spring that holds the tension on so that when you release, that spring is pulling that dog in. And then when you override, this arm is pushing it back to put the tension on. That spring wraps around the screw hole. And you might be able to see it. There's a tab right here, which is the back end of that spring, sitting in this little groove here. So if you've lost that spring, or if you're watching this video because you can't figure out how to get this dog back on, flat part of the spring belongs in this channel, and then you wrap that collar around there. Okay, we can just simply go back to what we were holding here. You can notice that's rectangular, as is this, so we can just slip that over. And then you want to just make sure you've got the orientation the right way. Spin it so that you know that it's intersecting with the teeth on this ratchet, as opposed to having it done the other way, at which point it would never grab. And we have that little collar for the top. So let's go ahead and get that on there. And then we can check under the rotor. We've got sand there, or dirt or something. And I like to use a penetrating oil to loosen that up. It kind of provides the sticky. And then a paper towel to wipe away as a cleaner. And if you get in some tight spots, use a cotton swab to get in there. For example, in this little channel here where that the bail is. And then we should be in good condition with that. Okay, we are, so we can go ahead and reinstall. Clean out that little channel there. Before we reinstall, I'm going to put a drop of oil onto each side of the bail arm. Now this one's an inactive arm. It's just a piece of metal going through the plate. This one is active over here. You do not need to do anything with the bail arm. For example, removing the assembly, unless you find that it's not working. I have a lot of folks calling or sending me messages in the comments section. How do I reinstall the bail? Well, sometimes the question is, why did you remove it? But that's okay. If you have any issue with the bail, then go ahead and take that off. The bails operate on two different types of spring systems. They may have a spring that's a coil spring in here, or you may have an arm bar, kind of a coil. Either way. If you need help on that, if you've done that, and you're stuck, then shoot me a note in the comments section. We'll be happy to try and get you unstuck with that. All right, we're just kind of getting rid of some of that little old grease in there. Make sure that the case is clean. This one's very clean. As I mentioned, it's really about being over dry. Just going to, there's one more piece of dry grease here that came through. Checking the pinion gear now. That's clean. If it was clogged or anything, you can do this, right? You can grab a toothpick or a metal pick or something else to get any of the breakage or the old dried grease out. In this case, this one is fine. There we go, we got them all done. I'm going to use Pen Precision Real Grease. We used the oil before. We're going to use the grease now to grease up that pinion gear. Get a good amount on there. It hasn't had grease in quite some time, so let's make sure that it's greased up nicely. There is no bearing in the back side. That it's actually part of the case acts as a bushing. Same thing on this side. So folks ask me, what's the difference in when you see a pricing on a reel? One of the differences is how they treat the bearings or the moving pieces and parts and where they are. And a lot of times the answer is that if they go with a bushing versus a bearing to save a couple of pennies, then that's one of the things that translates into a lower priced reel. And in this case, they've foregone both. They just manufactured it with the case acting as the bushing and the bearing. Not a big deal. Over time, if it wears out, though, there's no replacement strategy there. It's simply replace the case. And at that point in time, with something like this, you're probably going to be out of luck. Okay, we've cleaned all of that out. We're going to go grab our brush again, grab that grease again, and again, just like we did on the main, on the pinion gear, we're going to do to the main. This is the main in my hand right now. This is made of some kind of molded metal. And we'll just get it on both sides here. And we can go ahead and reinstall the main gear in. Pressing down, make sure it's seated properly. We want to go ahead and install the rotor now, kind of going backwards, right? Remember, this came off in the counterclockwise manner, so it goes back on in the clockwise way. And I like to do this by hand. Those of you that watch the channel hear me say that all the time. I like to get it started and tighten as much of that by hand as I can. That way I can ensure that it's not cross-stripped. But what we're seeing here, we're seeing kind of a low end of the value reel pricing. Certainly a nice design, but there's nothing fancy going on. We've got a case that welds in the drag washers. They can't be replaced. We got side plates that are using the side plate as the bushing. They can't be replaced. You have a minimum amount of moving parts. That's good stuff, right? So, you know, people can fish these reels day in and day out. There's no problem with what I'm seeing here in terms of compromising on the materials. It's just designs that have been set aside to lower the price of the reel. So don't be afraid if you have one of these to take it fishing, and take it fishing every day if you like. Or just call it what I call a cabin reel or a beach house reel. Just have it on board for when somebody comes to join you for the day and wants to go do some fishing, and you don't worry too much about what's going to happen to the reel because, well, not much can happen to this reel. But if it does, you have a limited investment there. Okay, we took the axle shaft, put that in. I'm clearing off the crosswind arm now. Again, some kind of metal. I'm not a metallurgist by any means. All right, we're going to put that over the dial, if you will. Then we're going to line the hole in the axle shaft with the hole in the crosswind, and then we have to line both of them with the track that rides in. There we go. You'll feel it when it comes in. Well, we certainly have it in because I've got it jammed now. There we go. All right, and then you just want to put a little bit of grease into this side in the track because that's where the other piece is going to run. We put a little bit of grease onto the main gear. We can put it on here as well. We can close the case up now. Make sure you hear that nice firm closing. Oops, we missed a piece. See, this is where the parts tray helps. We have that little shim washer. There's two of them. That holds that crosswind arm in. Now we can put this piece back in. I noticed when I took the screws out that those screws are the same length, so they can go in any position. I'm noticing as we're doing this that the writing on here are decals. Another example of where you save a penny or two on the production. They're not painted on. It also tells me that this reel may have been manufactured under different names for different countries. So this may have been the last export reel to the U.S., but that tag may read differently in the international markets where it's sold. So I don't know enough about it. I can't say for certain. I can only speculate. So if you like this kind of a video and you haven't subscribed, I would ask you to please subscribe to my channel. I try to post every day, and you'll see a wide variety of reels that I work on, and maybe one of them is one of the ones that you have, and maybe it's one of the ones you're thinking of buying. So if you do subscribe, I would ask you to hit the notifications button. Even if you are subscribed, I would ask you to hit the notifications button. That way you don't miss any of the ones that I'm doing. And as I mentioned, I do a wide variety of these, and if you're into the hobby of reel repair or thinking about starting a business or any of that stuff, then certainly I hope to show you some of the things and how they work and how to get those serviced. If you have any questions about this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, leave it in the comments section. I do try to respond to all of the comments. And then if you are a first responder, connect with me on the business card, and I will give you information on how to get one of your reel serviced at no charge to you. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be serviced and you're not looking to do it yourself, or you're stuck and you're somewhat given up on the project and you want to see if I can't make it whole for you, then I do repair reels, and you can contact me on the business card for information on how to send those reels to me. All right, just cleaning that up again. You can see one of the differences here. That's not painted. That's a little decal on there, subject to falling off. It's a plastic spool, and it's a closed drag system. So all we have to do is kind of get this aligned back on. I'm having a little trouble aligning it. Here's a trick. Turn it around and align it this way first. Then once you have them all aligned, you can take it. Oh, we did get it out. How do you like that? Well, that's so the answer here is that the question that was never asked is it's not pressed in. These are hard plastic, so there's nothing required there. So the only difference with this reel then is that the drag washers are just simply held in place by the adjuster knob, not by a clip. Well, we learned. All right, we're going to go ahead and put this in. I'm going to put the spool on first of the washers. Then you're going to have two round washers, one for the bottom, one for the top. Those are called keyed washers. They have a rectangular set to them. Put the second of that fabric washer in. The middle washer is called an eared washer. Kind of looks like the ears on a face. There's two slots in this. We'll go ahead and put those in. Move it over. Have the last of these. There's three fabric and there's three metal. You want to make sure that this one, that the downside is clear. It looks like whatever the metal coating is on the top wore off. Yeah, it's whatever that plating was, that's long gone. Of course, if the reel is 20 years old, you can expect that the salt water taking it there all the time would generally erode that. And we'll just put the drag button back on. All right, so I learned a little bit of something on this reel. I guess if I had a schematic, it probably would show. Tighten it down, make sure, yep, it's holding good, white knuckling. And there you go. So that's it. I kind of like this reel. It's a budget reel. It doesn't have any bearings in it. Has one bushing up top and uses the case on the side for the other bushings. It's a nice, smooth operating reel. As I mentioned, you don't have to be ashamed about having this one on your fishing pole or sharing with somebody that's up at your lake house or your beach house or on your boat. And I think you can probably still find these for under $20 used in the market today. So that's it. That's the Ryobi Fin Tek Silver Spin 5X fishing reel, 5XM. And I'll tell you what, it's a nice little reel for the price. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, again, please subscribe. If you have questions, please leave the questions in the comment section. If you're a first responder, thank you for all it is that you do. If you're an extended essential personnel, teachers and the like, thank you for all it is that you're doing. And to all, please stay safe. Listen to our authorities. Wear your masks. Maintain your social distancing. We will beat this. But boy, we've got to do everything we can to combat it. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.